Welcome back to the shop. Today we are working on a small size ladder. Now this ladder is probably 1.5 feet tall or so. It's going to go up on our upper kitchen cabinets, and I was going to show y'all how I put this round tenon on a piece of square stock. In that ladder video, I'm not exactly sure how much of this jig is going to be shown in it, so I thought I'd take the opportunity today to show y'all how I put that together. You just need a few pieces of scrap, and you'll need a Forstner bit the size that your tenon is going to be. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright y'all, so your jig is pretty much made up of two pieces. You have your stop, which is made up pretty much like a nail, and then you have this brace right here to keep this at a 90 degrees. That's not super important. That is just used for a stop for the material to go up against. And then you have the other piece that your material actually sits in, and this is going to be on the opposite side of the blade as the stop. Now, one thing I would say is when you're drilling your holes, you want them somewhat close to the bottom of this, because the higher this hole is up on your jig, the higher you're going to have to let your table saw blade up to get that cut. So you don't want it too high and be out of the reach of what you're trying to accomplish with the blade on the end of this dowel. So you basically have a base on this, two uprights with your hole cut in those. Now I will say this material is 9/16 by 9/16 square stock, and the actual hole is 3/4. So you're actually having to drill your hole diameter the width of this square stock diagonal. So you have to keep that in mind. If your stock is half by half, it's going to take a bigger Forstner bit than a 1/2 inch Forstner bit. So anyhow, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut this piece of scrap that we got. I think this should be enough. I'm going to use my stop from the previous project. But anyhow, we'll go ahead and cut this down on the table saw to the width that we need. And if we got a length that we have to cut on it, we're going to cut that over at the miter saw. The next thing we got to do is drill our holes out. We got the drill press, so we're going to mark this at 1 inch, and that's going to be from the bottom. And then really from front to back, that hole does not matter at all, as long as you got a little bit of working room. As long as both of these boards are the same, if that's off just a little bit, that'll be fine. So anyhow, we're going to use this, go set our stop block up on the drill press. We're going to cut that out, and then we'll be ready to put this together. Alright y'all, so we got the holes drilled. Now our stock is 9/16 by 9/16, and it fits in there pretty good. It's not too tight, not too loose. This is something you might have to play around with if you are going to be using a different size material, is the size hole that you're going to use. So anyhow, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and put these together. And actually the distance of these two is not super important. Now it's obvious if you're using a small piece or whatever size piece that it has to fit in there. But as far as an exact distance from one another, it's not a big deal. So we're going to go ahead, you don't have to put glue on this, but I'm going to go ahead and put glue on it. And I'm going to shoot a brad nail in it or two. And that'll just hold until we get our screws in it. And you probably don't even have to use screws in this. You can probably just use brads and glue and you'll be fine. But we're going to go ahead and do it. We plan on using this quite a few times, so. And make sure you got the holes turned right. And you're going to want this to be square with each other. So there's several different ways you can use your square and make marks, or you can use your tape measure. Alright, we're good there. So we'll go ahead and put a couple brads in it. Now you're going to want to countersink your screws so they're not sticking proud of the surface and have any kind of interference when you are actually using the jig. Alright y'all, so that's it. It is pretty much ready to use. Now these sides or whatever does not have to be that tall. That's just up to you how you want to do it. Now this one's not quite as tall. You just got to have that height for the hole in it. Go ahead and set up this on the table saw. We'll also use this stop, set that up, and I can go ahead and show y'all how this works. Alright y'all, so the way we're going to attach this to our table saw, we're going to be using our table saw sled. If you don't have a table saw sled, don't worry, you can use a piece of plywood and clamp that to the top of your table saw and still get the same result. So what we're going to do is push our sled up to where the middle part of the blade or the tallest part of the blade is lined up with about halfway of our jig, and then we're going to measure. If you want the tenon to be just say a 1/2 inch, then measure from your blade over to your stop, whatever distance you want, and then you can screw that down to the table saw sled. Now you can also clamp that down to your table saw sled if you make it in such a way that you can do that. Alright y'all, so we got our stop set up and fastened down. Now we need to fasten this. And this doesn't have to be in a specific spot either. We're gonna fasten this down. Alright y'all, so the next thing we gotta do is fasten this down to the actual table saw. And we're just going to use a few clamps and clamp this down in several different locations. And that should be good enough. We just want to make sure it's not going to move around anywhere on us when we're doing this. Alright, so here's another thing that you might want to consider. I'm going to have me a block over here with a hole already drilled in it. This is the size that we need the tenon to be. So we're going to have something that we can check that with as we raise this blade up. Now the height of this blade is going to determine the radius of the actual tenon. So I'm going to start off a little shallow or a little big, and I'm just going to try to creep my way up to the size of this actual hole. Alright y'all, so we have got the dowel cut out on the end, and it seems to fit real good. You don't want this to fit too tight because you also got to put some glue in there, and you want room for that. But you don't want it a little loose. You want it kind of snug. So anyhow, that's why I like keeping this test piece out next to this table saw when I'm cutting this out, because that way every time I lift that blade up just a little bit and run this through, I can take and test it out on this piece right here. That way I don't take out just a little too much. Every time you run it across there, especially when you get down close to the size that hole is going to be, check it out and make sure that you do or do not have to run it back through there again. Alright y'all, so that's a simple way to put a round tenon on a square piece of material. And there's a lot of different ways you can use this. You can use it building chairs, you can use it building quilt racks, you can use it on decorative pieces that you're making. You can use it on a ladder like we're making. So anyhow, a lot of different uses for this. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you want to see the ladder in the next video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see y'all on the next one.